Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, giving you the edge you need to get into the colleges of your dreams, with your host, Steve Schwartz. That's me. Today, we're talking with Dr. Ryan Gray. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm doing great.
Thanks so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I started off with kind of the understanding that I wanted to be a physical therapist, and that drew from me being an athlete and growing up playing baseball. I always wanted to be a professional baseball player. I grew up in Southern California, played baseball year-round, thought I was going to go to Arizona State, play baseball for them. But then I moved to Florida and hurt my shoulder and ended up in physical therapy for a long time. And so I said, this is pretty cool. I get to help other people on their journey to being a professional athlete or whatever they wanted to do. But at that time, getting into physical therapy school was harder than it was to get into medical school. And the physical therapist that I was shadowing in high school said, if you're smart enough to get into PT school, you might as well be a doctor. And right around that same time, I was dissecting a cat in an anatomy class, my senior year of high school. And that's what threw it over the edge for me. I just loved dissecting the cat, digging into the anatomy. I was going in during other off hours that I had with power tools that I brought in from home. I just had a blast. Some may have called it a problem, a little pathology there, but I had a blast. And from there on, I was like, okay, I'll marry my love of this anatomy that I'm learning here and my sports background, and I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. But fast forward a couple of years, I got into medical school. I accepted a scholarship from the Air Force, and the Air Force said, once I was ready to apply for all these specialties, the Air Force said no, I couldn't be an orthopedic surgeon, but they let me be a flight surgeon, which is kind of the default pathway, and is one of the best jobs in the world, taking care of pilots and other people that work on the planes and have that sort of access to the planes. It's an awesome job. But now here I am. I separated from the Air Force recently, and now I'm full-time with the medical school headquarters, helping, again, taking that kind of same thought that I had of helping others on their journey to become a professional athlete. I'm helping now others on their journey to be physicians.
Wow, Ryan, that's really cool. That's quite a story there. So long journey, going around the world, then deciding to help folks get into medical school after you yourself weren't even sure you were going to end up doing that path initially. What was the pivotal moment that led you to start helping others on their med school journeys?
Back in August-ish of 2010, I had just started my active duty tour for the Air Force. I was down in Dover, Delaware, and I had young airmen, 18, 19 years old, haven't gone to college yet, who are in the medical field more as technicians or some other people involved in our day-to-day operations. They were interested in medical school, what it would take to become a physician. So I would sit them down in my office and talk to them for like an hour and a half, and I realized that I liked it. They got a ton of great information out of it. I realized I was helping these people. And then I kind of thought back on my own journey and realized how poor the advising was, the advice that I got on my journey, and decided to go ahead and put up a website. The initial idea was just to put up a website and have a bunch of information on it and just leave it there. But then I realized I liked interacting more with the students that were trying to interact with me. The podcast started a couple months later. This was 2010, my initial conversations with this kid. There were a couple kids actually that I talked to. But the website didn't materialize until 2012, the podcast later in 2012.
Wow, very cool. So you're helping kids, on their journeys to med school, both high school students and college students?
Yeah,
right?
So I have a lot of high school students that listen to the podcast. Mostly, the majority of my podcast listeners are actually non-traditional students. So these are people that have finished their undergrad careers, maybe older in life, 30s, 40s, 50s even, that are now deciding that they want to go back and fulfill their childhood dream of becoming a physician.
Sure. No, that's wonderful. I'm trying to think, though, these students who are, already only in high school, and they're already thinking forward ahead, to when they'll be at, post college, or maybe they're doing some kind of combined pre-med undergraduate program. What are their stories like? Anyone come to mind?
I have a couple. We have David, the ninth grade high schooler, who's now in 11th grade, but he started interacting with me when he was in ninth grade. The stuff that he has done in high school, the interactions that he's been able to have with physicians, the connections, the networking that he's done is phenomenal. A lot of it, I think he attributes to listening to my podcast and getting ideas, which is awesome. But there are so many things that you can be doing in high school to start building these relationships and getting the interaction and getting the experience to make sure that medicine is right for you. Becoming a physician is a very, very, very long journey. It's an expensive journey. And for most people, it's worth it. But you really need to find out for yourself whether it is or not.
So a student like David, for example, he's had all these remarkable interactions with physicians, even though he's only a high school kid. What are some of the things he's done that you would imagine other students like him could be doing? Maybe for a ninth grader or 10th grader or their parents listening out there right now who are curious, what can they do to set themselves apart and help them figure out whether med school is the right path for them?
I think the first thing that any student needs to do is start to reach out to physicians to shadow. So when we say shadow physicians, you're literally a fly on the wall. You follow the physician around into the patient rooms. You kind of stand in the corner and observe. You watch, you listen. You typically aren't interacting at all with the patient. You're not interacting with a physician during this time. You're just observing and seeing what it's like. And then you leave the room, and sometimes the physician will let you ask some questions. He might have some teaching points for you. But that's the start, is reaching out to physicians. And it could be, if you're in high school, it could be your parents' physicians. It could be your own physician, although sometimes that gets a little weird for some people. But typically your parents' physicians, if your parents ask that and say, hey, my son is interested, my daughter's interested in going to medical school. We've heard that shadowing a physician is important to get the experience they need. Would you be willing to have my son, my daughter shadow you? And that's really the start. So David has set up a pre-med clubs, I believe. So that's another thing you can do as a high schooler is surround yourself with like-minded students who are also possibly interested in going to medical school, and you have power in numbers. So you get a group of students, and then you can start bringing in guest lecturers and speakers and other things. There's a lot of opportunities out there, but I think it starts with reaching out to physicians and shadowing.
No, those are all wonderful ideas, Ryan. Thank you for sharing those. I'm curious, the shadowing for a moment. Are we talking about, an isolated day, a couple of days, a week, a month, here and there, on and off? What are some of the formats that you've seen physicians be most, positively, minded towards?
All of the above. I think from the student's perspective, the longer that you can shadow a single physician, the better. Having that continuity allows you to truly get a sense of what this physician's life is like. But it also lets you, I'm all about relationships and networking. And so it allows you to build a relationship with one physician so they can see you grow as a student. And maybe in the future, they can write you just a killer letter recommendation to help you get into medical school. But I've seen it all. There are sometimes physicians don't have time, and when you're asking physicians, you may get a lot of no's because they don't have time to let you shadow. But so a physician may let you just do it once. They may let you do it once a week during a certain time period. If you do it over a long period of time, hopefully that physician will be able to see you grow as a student. So they'll be able to see your motivations behind wanting to go to medical school, and they'd be able to write you a killer letter of recommendation. They'll be able to recommend you to other physicians that you can shadow. They may have connections at a medical school. You never know the type of connections that will come out of a relationship. So That's great. There also is value in seeing other physicians and seeing different specialties as well. In high school, your job isn't to narrow down a specialty. It's just to get a sense of what medicine is like.
No, sure, just seeing what those options are out there, but I couldn't agree more. The idea of developing a relationship with the physician, getting those letters of recommendation potentially, and who knows where it could lead. They might even put you in touch with someone who could open other doors for you down the line. So great advice. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'm wondering if one thing we love to hear on College Admissions Toolbox are stories. So I'm wondering if there are any worst moments you've seen or you yourself have experienced related to the pre-med path. Anything come to mind?
So my best story is always, I always tell this, and one of my motivations for starting the medical school headquarters, I told you that I had pretty poor advising in college. I went to a large state school. I went to University of Florida. So there's a lot of students there, and the advisors are overwhelmed. And my advisor, for whatever reason, this is back in 2001-ish, my advisor told me not to apply to medical school, not because I had poor grades, not because I did poorly on the MCAT, which is the test that you need to take to get into medical school, but because I was a white male. And wow. Yeah, so that was my advising. That was my big, like, what are you talking about? I went back recently and did the math. The AAMC, which is the big organization that handles the medical school applications, they have data that shows race and ethnicity and everything for applications. So I went back to the year that I would have applied, or that I did apply, and it was something like 32 or 33% of the students that got into medical school were white males. So
sure.
I don't know what she was thinking. But yeah, there's the pre-med path. This is another reason I kind of started the medical school headquarters. The pre-med path is very cutthroat. It's very competitive. And our mantra is collaboration, not competition. There are plenty of seats in medical school for the students that deserve it. There are way too many people that apply to medical school that shouldn't be applying because their grades aren't good enough. And so when you kind of get the power of numbers, you're helping each other strengthen each other's applications, you're strengthening each other's resolves, you're supporting each other. There's room for everybody in medical school. And so there's a lot of stories that I can tell that are floating around of just horrible competitive nature in the pre-med world.
No, but that's really great advice. Don't be discouraged simply on the basis of something that even has no statistical validity as your experience. But I really like what you're saying, Ryan, the idea of collaboration among applicants rather than competition, rather than trying to sabotage each other. If you find friends out there who are also applying to something similar, you can strengthen each other's applications. You can bounce ideas off each other. You can improve each other's applications. And then who knows, maybe two of you end up going down the same path, being lifelong friends. Only good things can happen from working with others. So I really like what you're doing with med school headquarters. I want to shift gears now, Ryan, and move into my favorite part of the interview, which is the lightning round. I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. You give me some rapid fire responses. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Great. What's your number one piece of advice for the college admissions process?
Make sure that you're applying to a school that you want to be at, not a school that you think will help your applications to medical school or whatever is next in your journey. If you're applying to an undergrad just because you think it's a great pre-med school and all of a sudden you no longer want to be pre-med, you may not want to be at that school anymore. So go to a school that's going to fit you overall, not just because you think it's a great pre-med school.
A great advice. You never know what the future will hold. You don't want to limit your options. You want to keep them wide open. Could you share with us one habit that you believe contributes to college admissions success?
Planning. There are a lot of steps that need to be taken in the college admissions process and the medical school admissions process that take a lot of planning. You need to plan your personal statement. You need to plan trips to schools. You need to figure out what's involved in all of that. And so you really need to plan. I love the quote, if you plan to fail, you fail to plan. Wait, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. You definitely want to start the process early. Really, it's a big decision. You want to make sure that you've given it the due consideration. Could you share with us one online resource that you absolutely love related to pre-med applications, admissions?
Well, the medical school headquarters is a pretty good one, the medicalschoolhq.net. But I think you need to go to the heart, and that's AAMC.org. That's the body that's behind the applications.
And what does that stand for? AAMC?
The Association of American Medical Colleges.
Great. AAMC. We'll link to that one in the show notes. Thank you. What's one book related to this that you absolutely love?
There are a lot of books for the pre-med world out there. Atul Gawande is a surgeon in Boston who has written a ton of great books, not necessarily pre-med related, but medically related. And so I think those are some good ones to dig into.
Oh, no, he's wonderful. I'm actually a huge fan. He's written a lot of articles in the New Yorker as well, just all different aspects of medicine and just, unique ways of thinking as well about systems and processes. Really great stuff. We'll link to some of those in the show notes. So you've got medschoolhq.net, and what are you up to over there?
So at the medical school headquarters right now, we're releasing a podcast every week about the pre-med journey. We're also working on 3 other podcasts, which is crazy.
Wow.
We're doing a collaboration with Premed Life Magazine, which is another great website. We're doing a collaboration with Old Pre-Meds, which is a website for non-traditional students in the pre-med world and medical school world. But my main podcast right now is the pre-med world, and we're actually going to start another podcast that deals with medical student topics as well. So we're pretty busy, and we've been doing a lot of coaching and helping students get into medical school, doing mock interview training, personal statements, editing, and all kinds of stuff like that.
Oh, wow. This is all really exciting. I had no idea you were up to so much, but definitely a lot of great resources out there for anyone who's considering the pre-med path. And medschoolhq.net, medical school headquarters, is the best place to find you?
Yeah, it's medicalschoolhq.net.
Medicalschoolhq.net.
I do have medschoolhq.net redirect, so I was smart enough. I was smart enough to do that.
Awesome. Good planning. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ryan. Really great advice. Looking forward to getting this one out there and sharing your advice with everyone.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks for listening to College Admissions Toolbox. Head over to www.collegeadmissionstoolbox.com to get more free tools and resources that will help you get into the colleges of your dreams.